Welcome to Masterminds in Maintenance, a podcast for those with new ideas in maintenance. I'm your host, Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Upkeep. Each week, I'll be meeting with a guest who's had an idea for how to shake things up in the maintenance and reliability industry. Sometimes the idea failed, sometimes it made their business more successful, and other times their idea revolutionized an entire industry. Today, I'm super excited. We've got Torbjörn Idhammar here on the show. Tor is the president and CEO of IDCON, a reliability and maintenance management consulting and training company. He's got 25 years of experience here in this industry, worked at 60 different plants across 15 different countries. Sounds like you must be on a plane a lot. Welcome to the show, Tor. I'm really excited to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks, Ryan.
I would love to start things off by, having you share a little bit more about your background, how you were first introduced to this, wonderful small little niche of maintenance and reliability.
My dad started a business, IDCON, in 1974 in Sweden, moved over here in 85. So I was never going to work for my dad, but I was introduced to my first maintenance and reliability seminar when I was like 14 years old, right? So he took me a whole week and sent me through one of these seminars, and then we're talking 1980. So he had started one of the first CMMS systems in Sweden. And he thought that, well, you do an internship in Sweden. We do an internship as early as high school. So we do a week in different businesses. So he said, why don't you come and listen? So I had to sit through a week there and learn about CMMS. The first ones, it was the first PCs were coming out, the ABC 80s and stuff, right? And then I worked through college at IDCON here in the US. I went to North Carolina State University. And then I went to Lund University, took my master's degree in mechanical engineering, military service somewhere in between there, where it's a lot of maintenance work. So I had a lot of maintenance kind of experience. And then I started working in Sweden and wasn't really planning on moving back and doing this. But long story short, we said we want to travel, me and my girlfriend at the time, then became a wife. And we moved over and we just stayed for 3 years. And 20 some years later doing this.
Yeah, I mean, what a crazy twist of events. Said, you'd never work for your dad, but how things have evolved, and it seems like time just flies by, huh?
It does. It's crazy. Yes, for sure, it's crazy.
I know that you and I were just speaking about a paper that you just wrote, actually, on the 8 key steps to implementing a better preventative maintenance program. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
People have different definitions. We define it as all the actions to find a failure early, meaning we can clean equipment, we can keep it cool, etc. Right? We can balance, we can align. That's what we call PM. What we don't call PM is the corrective planned and scheduled, because we don't want the overlap in definitions. The first thing I think what people miss a little bit in PMs is that we used to go ahead and we dive into saying, okay, let's just start documenting PMs. We don't do any project management stuff like setting up, what's the scope of PM? Do you need to include, do you want operators to do PMs? Do we include the lubrication? And the biggest piece of that is get management on board, actually. That is the hardest part. We don't actually ground the PM implementation with a good project plan, telling management what is it going to cost, what am I going to get out of it? The next one is to document the PM, and there's several steps in there, so I'm kind of lumping one in all. Typically for most of us is to review the PM. We need to review the current PMs we have. So saying, okay, what is it we have? What is it we should have, basically? The next step that was often missed too is to systematize. So when we talk about, like you, Ryan, you do CMMS softwares and asset management, offer a lot of great technology tools. In my experience, people say, let's just improve the PM, so we put it all in SAP. And I'm saying, okay, or Maxima, whatever you have, right? But the problem is, okay, you're going to put your vibration routes in SAP. It's like, no, we have a separate software for that. But we need to systematize and think about how do we actually get the documentation that we have now created that's beautiful and simplified and effective. How do you actually get it out to the people in an effective way? And by the way, don't we need to train people, and don't we do something around management to teach them how to manage our new documentation? It's a lot of assumptions there, right? So that's the third step. And then I think the fourth and last step is just relentless follow-up, making sure these PMs being done. So that's a short version of those all eight steps that we were talking about.
Yeah, no, I love it. And what I heard, if I were to summarize that, one, there's a cost to doing PMs. Like, theory is great, but when you actually start looking at the cost, you have to weigh the benefits versus the cost. I hear having a centralized system is extremely important. You can't be doing PMs in 17 different places, because when you try to draw conclusions off of all these PMs, you have to be able to report on it in a holistic view. And then the last piece here is relentless follow-up. Obviously you've seen so many different companies, so many different industries. What are the most common pitfalls that you've seen in implementing a successful PM program?
So many times I heard that people say, well, we support it, guys. You don't worry about it. Let's go ahead and just implement the PMs. Well, what does support mean? I would just ask that question to the managers. And I think it's a fair question. Sometimes we're just afraid to kind of push back a bit, right? But basically, it's a lot of things. But I think number one is provide resources. So when you start your PM program, be clear to the management, I need these resources. As two, as a manager supporting also need that relentless follow. I'll come back to that. So if PMs are not being done, if you're a manager, you need to find out why they're not being done. There may be good reasons for it. Another thing is, like I mentioned, I think that people make a PM a complete documentation exercise. So as engineers, we tend to say, oh, great, the theoretical part, here's the gearbox. How do we inspect it? How do we prevent failures early? And we make these beautiful inspections and we document all this. But we have no discussion around, okay, how are the guys actually going to expect this? So we can't make it a documentation project. And I'm going to have a short note about RCM, reliability centered maintenance. That's a methodology to, at the end, get your PMs and also get your spare parts, critical spare parts defined. Of course, as a reliability engineer, you need to know RCM, but if you're going to do full blown, and I mean a full blown classical RCM, it's just too time consuming. And then we don't systematize. So we don't train our guys and gals, how to do it. We operators inspections here, do this list, and they don't even know where the bearings and the motors are. So people are told, here's a route, and we still write these routes in Word, Ryan. It's insane. And so therefore all the inspections end up in the same frequency. It's like, well, this is too much. I can't schedule in Word. So every inspections is done weekly. And somebody says, no, let's do them daily. I've been to plants that do them every shift. I've been to plants that do them daily. I've been to plants that do them monthly, and the same equipment basically. The last one I would say is that we build all this and we get them launched, and people are actually going out doing inspections, and then we don't fix what we find. That's the next one, right? So we go out and we find all those problems, and then, well, who's going to fix them? It's like, well, we don't have time to fix them because we're going out fixing breakdowns. So we don't have time to do our PMs, right?
I'm going to ask a very, very broad question. Most commonly, do you see companies over maintaining, over PMing their equipment, under PMing their equipment, or is it they're PMing and maintaining the wrong assets and the wrong equipment? Or do you think that it's a more training issue? What do you think is not really a problem?
I mean, the short answer is a combination of those. But if you had a really well-trained person doing PMs and you have management that knew that this was important, so we divide time and resources, you don't really need a system for that temporarily. I mean, you can send somebody out and say, do the PMs, you know what to do. I mean, in theory, right? But people change, people move positions. So therefore we need the systems around it. So what I see is all of those things. I see people, it seems to start like this. We don't have many PMs in the system when we were a greenfield plant, right? So it's like, oh, we cut that out of the budget, right? We save some money. So now we start adding PMs. We're creating a culture, basically habit, right? Plant habit of, oh, we have a failure, we used to add a PM. Have a failure, we add a PM. And after a few years, all of a sudden we have these random PMs. We have like 12 PMs on this gearbox and we have nothing on that cylinder, right? Because we just add when we have failures. We don't have time to do them. So we don't execute those PMs that we have, because what's the point? Because I used to go back to the same darn gearbox all the time. So instead of just thinking through, what does this equipment need? All right, and it needs A, B, C. And let's just stick with that. And if we do that, we're going to prevent 90% of the failures. But some failures can't be prevented. That's something that some people don't understand, because we don't have a failure developing period.
You start slipping on one and it perpetuates the other three. And it becomes that downward spiral, which I think, again, is a great transition into this next question around measuring the signs of an effective PM program. Would love your thoughts on this, because I struggle with it with our customers, people in the industry.
There's a lot of things there. How do you see a good PM? So if you look at it from a more philosophical standpoint, really good maintenance is really uneventful. It's actually really boring because everything just works, right? You're the Maytag man. I'm not saying maintenance people would just sit with their feet up, not doing anything like the Maytag man. When you just come in and the environment is just completely different. You don't have any people on shift. Why don't you have any people on shift? Because a plant can run 16 hours. They have one instrument guy on shift. That's it. You don't have, because we don't have any breakdowns. So those are typical signs. And when it comes to measuring that, I think it really comes back to more the culture, the plant habit. But if you're going to set this up in CMMS, you definitely want to have PM completion, right? Did I do the PMs I said I want to do? But that is based on that you actually have good PMs to start with, like you said, right?
Exactly.
And if you don't have that, what's the point of measuring that? And then if you do, assume you have good PMs though. Let's say we go through the PMs and say we have good PMs. Let's make sure we complete it. Pretty simple. Let's make sure we complete the good ones. And then that whatever we find from those PMs goes into our planning and scheduling system. They're prioritized and we fix them. And I don't know your clients, but I'm guessing that your clients have an issue because they don't have the fundamentals. They don't have good PMs to start. So there's no point in measuring chaos, right?
It's a really good point. And I find that oftentimes, we're trying to measure chaos. This is a great, again, like transition into a positive topic around what's the future of PM optimization, implementation. What does that look like?
Artificial intelligence is coming, right? Artificial intelligence with faster. I think it's coming faster than we think. And I think machine learning is really coming. The itty bitty I know about machine learning is we're changing our thought process. And if I understand it right, and you can correct me here because I think you're more in this field, Ryan. But what we are thinking as maintenance people is like, okay, if the motor goes over 175 degrees Fahrenheit, it is a no-go. We got look, listen, feel, smell. We take a temperature, and if vibration goes over 0.25 inches per second, let's do something, right? Call some type of action, which is all good. I mean, if we can get to that point, it'd be great because we're not even there yet. But I think the next thing what happens is the gearbox failed. And then you say, well, what were the conditions when this gearbox failed? Well, the vibration was this, temperature was this, and you say, okay, that is condition. So then we teach our machines, when you see this condition here, then the machine says that's no good, no good when we see this, right? And we do that over and over again. The machines slowly learn that these are, and they're going to find paths that we don't find. And I'm actually in contact with a couple of companies that launched this, that's central control centers. They have AI in 15, 20 factories, and they are monitoring equipment, and they're obviously learning. It's early stages. And what's made this possible is, the Moore's law, that of computing. They say, some people say that in 2023, we'll have a computer, a laptop that's for $1,000 is as good as a human brain, and then in 25 years after that, we'll have a computer that can go as, all the collective human brains.
And you hit the nail on the head. And I'm personally really excited by it, even though it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, people think the machine's going to take over or something like that. But one point I want to make is I think it's so important that human computer is the powerful thing, right? So we think something's going to happen and never really happened that way in technology. And I can see like our business here is going to change. And that's why I'm trying to learn a little bit more about it, because we may be more looking at how do we maintain sensors and the condition monitoring equipment. And, it's going to evolve somehow, some way.
Last question for me, Tor. What's something you wish more people knew about within the maintenance and reliability space?
I don't think it's that important that we need to, there's things that we can learn, don't get me wrong. But I think the problem is not knowing things. I think the problem is that we don't execute. On all the plants that I go to day after day, I'll talk to the plant manager, and he or she will tell me, look, we really need to improve our planning and scheduling. We need to improve our PM, whatever it may be, but they have a problem executing. So that's like, we gear our consulting a lot towards that help on the floor, because the managers, they kind of know what to do. They may not know exactly how to do it. They don't know all the steps, and they need a little help there for sure. Because if we talk about maintenance, any type of maintenance, unless you actually get a craftsperson to do a job more efficiently and with higher quality, you haven't accomplished anything. We set up a beautiful lubrication route in one plant. We had 8 lubricators. Everything was set, the volumes, the type, everything, but they weren't doing the routes. And it took them 6 months just to get people to do the routes. And they had a number of different issues, training and union rules and whatever it is. But execution is what people need to understand, that needs to happen.
Tor, how can our listeners, follow you on your journey and connect with you?
Well, the easiest way is to go up to our website, idcon.com, and you get a little pop-up box. It's really annoying, sorry, but that's what the marketing people tells us to do. If you type your email address in there, we do videos every week. We do articles, and I'm going to connect with guys like you, of course, and get these podcasts and things out. And that little 8-step guide, you can find it there if you sign up. But at some point, you'll get it. Of course, feel free to call me, email me. Easiest info@idcon.com.
Thank you so much again, Tor, for joining us. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to today's Masterminds and Maintenance. My name is Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Upkeep. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email directly at ryan@onupkeep.com. Lastly, you can also find me on the maintenance community on Slack, the largest community for maintenance professionals in the world, where we host weekly conversations, contests, all centered around maintenance. I hope to connect with everyone soon. Until next time, thanks again, Tor.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.